My name's Steve DeWitt. I'm the lead product manager for WebFOCUS AI, and I'd like to show you some of the new features we have in WebFOCUS 9.3.7. First, we've made some big improvements to the machine learning functions. These are powerful. They allow you to predict and analyze your data in ways that go far beyond what you can do with traditional techniques. And we've made them more powerful than ever. First of all, automated predictor selection is important. One of the most important things when you're building a model is to make sure that you have the right features in the model for prediction. We're trying to help you focus on the things that are most relevant to what you're trying to find out and making that a little bit easier so that we get into less noise in those models and more efficiency and accuracy. Another piece I'll highlight here is scalability. In 9.3.7, we have tested binary classification models with up to 2 million rows, which is a big improvement and allows us to deal with a lot more data. The biggest changes and improvements you're going to see are around natural language query. In 9.3.7, NLQ uses the 5.4 model, big upgrade to the previous version. It has improved performance and better language capabilities. It has a vocabulary of about 200,000 words. They're not all in English. It does require that you run it on a machine with a GPU. To get the kind of performance and accuracy that we're able to give you now, we need that improved hardware. This doesn't apply to other WebFOCUS services or to the other DSML services, but if you want to use natural language query, you do need GPU hardware. We've also beefed it up by providing consistently better, accurate visualizations of the data that comes back from your query. I'll show you that when we get to the demo. And also added the ability to toggle back and forth between table and chart views, which data people like to do. So let's get into the WebFOCUS Hub and have a look. I'm going to use some data that is a sample of banking data looking at the customers of a bank with many branches. It has some demographic information about them. It has some financial information about them. And it also has some attributes generated by an ML model that tell us their estimated likelihood of churning. So which customers are at risk according to the model versus which are safe. And in this demo, I'm going to try to give something of the journey an analyst might go through thinking about who are our at-risk customers and how do we identify them. Okay, we start with this intimidating blank canvas. So it might be useful to ask NLQ for some suggestions about what are good questions we might ask. And as I mentioned, we're thinking about at-risk customers, so we'll choose this one. Tell us the average balance for clients with at-risk status. All right, I promised improved visualizations, but we don't really get one here because there's only one data point, so we get a simple table. And we see that across our enterprise, the average balance of a customer who is considered to be at risk is almost $27,000. Obviously, it makes a real difference how many of those customers we have, but we'll go on and investigate some more. I have a series of questions I want to run through here. I'm going to copy and paste them just so that we don't spend time with me typing. All right, first of all, how many customers are safe versus at risk? All right, again, tabular data because it's a very, very simple request, but we see that we have about, call it 8,000 customers, and of those, 1,300 are at risk. So a very substantial percent, especially when we see that the average balance for one of those customers is almost $27,000. So let's see what else we can learn. All right. Our customers all have credit cards in differing tiers, blue being the one with the lowest credit limit and platinum being the highest. So let's say, show me the total balance of the customers at risk, but let's break it down by credit card category. All right, this time we get the visualization I promised, and the visualization is in fact a ring chart. Our bank has for all at-risk customers, there's a total balance of about 35.7 million, and most of that belongs to our blue card holders, 75.7% I see when I hover over it. Over here, at the other end of the spectrum, the platinum card holders have less than 1% of that. Okay, so let's take it a little further. Let's say, okay, this balance by card was interesting, but now let's break it down by branch. So show me the balance per branch per card category for my at-risk customers. I think I pasted the wrong thing. Let's do that one more time. All right, there's the answer we were expecting. And this time we get a stacked bar chart. So we see for each branch broken out by card type with balance along the y-axis. So first of all, our highest overall total balance for at-risk customers appears to be in Houston. Most of that balance in every place seems to break out the same way it did across the whole enterprise, with it being primarily in our blue card holders. All right, good. Now, thinking about that, probably blue card holders are in the lower income category since it's the easiest card to get. So let's see how our average predicted churn looks compared to income category. All right, this time we get a simple bar chart that shows that, as we might have guessed, it is our lower income category customers who are at the highest risk of churn. And I think I forgot before to show you this, but look, I can toggle over here, look at this, well, very simple tabular report in this case, or go back to the graph. And that's true whenever I have a visualization. Okay. So average predicted churn by income category was not surprising, but let's say average predicted churn and the average balance for each of our branches. All right. Okay, this time we have a multi-y-axis chart with average predicted churn on the right and average balance on the left. And we can compare and look throughout and see that the highest average balance appears to be at, would you say it's Detroit from that? Well, we can hover and have a look. So 78 in Detroit, 77 in Chicago, and our highest predicted churn would appear to be Detroit, where it's about 21 over Atlanta, or New York is in the same general area. Okay. Interesting. So let's take it a little further. All right, so who are our actual customers? But in particular, we're interested in the customers with high balances. And so let's find the customers with the highest average risk of churn sorted descending. So we see the most at-risk customers, but with balances greater than $250,000. All right, this time we know there's quite a few of these customers, and so we're going to get a horizontal bar graph that allows us to scroll down. But the interesting thing is here, we have a real outlier in Francis Robinson, who has almost a 90% risk of churn. Henry Carlson, quite a ways behind with 64. And we can scroll down this, or again, toggle over, look at it this way. And maybe we'd like to refine this still further. So let's take this question and just add a particular branch. Okay, so this simplifies it a little bit. And we see Henry Carlson and Sandra Oliveras, who are 2 and 3 on the other list, are now 1 and 2. So we know we filtered it. By the way, what would I like to do with this report? As an analyst sitting here, it's useful to look at this information and play with it, but maybe I'd like to save this and come back to it later. So I have the option to save this to a workspace. And now that I've saved it in my workspace, I can open it up in Designer and edit it or refine it or decorate it however I might like. All right, next question. What is the balance, the average predicted churn, and the transaction count broken down by branch city? This time, we have 3 different metrics: balance, predicted churn, and transaction count. So we get a bubble chart showing this. And hovering over it, I can look and see in Houston, my average predicted churn is quite low, and my balance is pretty high. So that's very impressive. Whereas over here on the other end of the spectrum, New York has a considerably higher expected churn rate and a considerably lower balance. So that's an interesting insight that I might be able to use in my business. So let's look more at New York. Here I'm saying, what is the average predicted churn in New York for each year after 2020? My data set has data from 2020 to 2025, I think. So if we look at this, we can see what the trend is in predicted churn in New York. And we get this nice line chart. And what we can learn from this is, interestingly, that in 2021, our predicted churn was up to 24%. So New York, despite being the worst in our bank, is actually improving quite a bit over the last 5 years. All right, now looking even more closely at New York, let's look at our New York customers and break them down and see the customers with balance, predicted churn, and transaction count. How often do they actually use our bank for just our New York customers? All right, this time I get a very noisy bubble chart back because I'm asking for all of my New York customers. And maybe we'd like to actually see this up close. And we can still get some useful information out of it here. So here, for example, is a very reliable, oops, actually I'm going the wrong way. This customer has an average predicted churn of less than 1%, very secure, and is also, I think, the highest balance of anyone in our bank. So a good customer. Looking at the other end of the spectrum, here's Henry Carlson, whose name came up in some of these other reports, who's got a 64.05 risk of churn and a balance of close to $300,000. So this is a customer we should be focusing on. And as we look around here, we'll see some others that are interesting. Here's Sandra Oliveras, whose name came up in another report. Richard Vargas, we should probably be investigating. So again, learning more about our New York customers. Now, to make that report perhaps just a little less noisy, let's filter that down. We knew it was our blue card customers who represent the bulk of our at-risk balance. So let's check out our blue card customers in New York. With the same metrics. All right. So as expected, a somewhat less noisy version of the first one, since we've taken out everyone but those blue card customers. So as you can see, this is getting to be a powerful tool. I have the ability to go in, ask reasonable questions about my data to find out things an analyst really needs to know and get back information that I can use and take action on. So that's what's happening in NLQ 9.3.7, and please reach out and let me know if you have any questions about this. Thank you.